Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. This is Frederick Chopin, born in 1810. Am I speaking loud enough? Can you hear me?
Yes.
You're doing this.
Yes.
So
That's my ears.
okay. All right. This is Frederick Chopin. It's a portrait painted by Eugene Delacroix. And he was born in 1810 in Poland. He lived there for 20 years. He had studied piano, and his teacher, when he was 10, said, "I can't teach you anymore. You know everything I know." And he started composing in his teen years. And he was a genius. And we know that today because his music continues to live. He wrote over 260 piano pieces. And there's one man that recorded them all. His name was Garrick Olson. And he won the Chopin competition in Warsaw, which is held every 5 years. Now today, for the last week, in Miami, Florida, they're having a competition for the Chopin Foundation. It's done every year. There are going to be 80 people trying out in the first round of this competition, and the winner in October will go to Warsaw for the International Chopin Festival. So he's alive and well still. If you arrive in Warsaw, you're arriving at the Chopin International Airport. And I just found out yesterday, when you go to the airport, there are bottles of vodka that are called Chopin vodka. It's supposed to be very good. I don't drink anymore, so I don't know. Anyway, because all of these people the 80 people that are trying out for this have to start out playing a nocturne. Now, he wrote 21 nocturnes, so not every one of those 80 is going to be playing the same nocturne. And then there's a series of eliminations, rounds that keep going on. And in the 20th of this month, the winner in Miami will be named, and in October we'll go to Warsaw, where the International Chopin competition is held. I mean, he's the favorite son of Poland. So I thought, because they're all starting out with a nocturne, I would too. But before I do that, I want to tell you how I got here. I mean, I wouldn't be playing the piano today if I hadn't heard a piece when I was 10 years old. I went with my sister to a piano recital, high school recital, and a senior in high school played this piece that just overwhelmed me. And when I went home, I told my parents, I said, if you will foot the bill for piano lessons, and in 1950, that's when I was 10, they cost about $1.50 for an hour. And I said, if you foot the bill, I will study as long as it takes to play this particular piece. So they said, okay. It took me like 4 or 5 years before I was able to play it publicly, but I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for this piece. It's called Malagueña by Ernesto Lecuona. So I'd just like to show you how I got started with all of this. At 10 years old. Malagueña. This is what started it all. I wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for this piece.
Steve Mulligan.
Thank you. So, this is a nocturne. It's a night song, is what nocturne means. And Chopin was a great improviser. So you will hear me establish a melody the first time through, and then when I repeat the melody, there's a lot of extra filigree and stuff that he does. He improvises around the melody and changes it a bit. Sometimes, years later, he would teach this to his students, and he would do such improvising that he would republish the piece. Some of these pieces are published like 4 different times with 4 different kinds of improvisation in them. He was a great improviser. When he finally had an affair with, for 7 years with Georges Sand, whose name was really Aurora Dudevant, she said he would forget, because he played at salons all over Paris. He had stage fright. He didn't like to play in front of 2,000 people. He would get nervous 3 days before, real stage fright. And when he would improvise at one of these salons, and like 3 days later, he would go back to his room and try to remember how he had improvised, to put it down on paper. And George said he would go to his room and lock himself in and spend the whole day trying to remember what he did a few days ago to put that down. She didn't like to listen to him practice all day, because that's what he did all day. So she lined his room, every place they lived, with another wooden walls and the floor and the ceiling, so she didn't have to hear him. Since all of these 80 contestants in Miami are playing a nocturne, I thought I'd start out with a nocturne by this guy. It's amazing. It's called Nocturne in E flat. And the way I discovered this, I saw a movie when I was 16 years old. I didn't know anything about Chopin from 10 to 16. And I saw a movie called The Eddie Duchin Story with Tyrone Power and Kim Novak. And the theme, all the way through the movie, it was orchestrated, a lot of violins, and sometimes it was played solely, but it was this nocturne. And I fell in love with this song, and so I'd like to start with this. The next piece I'd like to play is a waltz. He wrote 14 different waltzes. This is called Waltz in C sharp minor. And underneath the title, this is printed so many different times in so many music books. And underneath the title, he dedicated it to a woman named Charlotte Rothschild. And she was from the banking family, the European banking family. So I tried to find, there's a book of extant letters of his, but I couldn't find any correspondence with this Rothschild woman. But he was always broke. So I imagine some money might have changed hands, because every time this is published in italics, right below it says, "A Mademoiselle Charlotte Rothschild." So, but he taught piano to aristocratic children and wealthy parents of children. That's how he made his money. He also made his money by selling his compositions. So this is a waltz. Is there anything else I want to tell you about this? He wrote 19 waltzes. Again, in the middle of this, there is a melody that when you hear it the second time, like in the Nocturne, he improvises around the melody. So we can listen for that. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. In the 20th last century, I'm going to play 3 different sections of pieces that became popular songs in the 20th century that were written by this guy 100 years earlier. The first one I'm going to play is an etude. An etude is a study, and he wrote dozens of these for different problems with the hands. This particular etude, the study, is, he loved opera, and he loved the singing from what is it called?
Canto.
Bel what?
Bel canto.
Say it louder.
Bel
canto.
Bel canto.
Bel canto. And that means beautiful singing. And the melody was always prominent with him. So the exercise of this study is to keep the melody prominent while all the other notes are subservient to the melody. And this was made into a popular song in 1950 by Joe Stafford and Perry Como. We all remember them. And it's called No Other Love, but it was taken from this etude. The first lyrics of it: no other love can warm my heart now that I've known the comfort in your arms. No other love is the first lyrics of it. But this is, and you listen for the melody on this. I'm just going to play a little of it. You get the idea of that. Now I'm going to another one. 15 years after he died, his older sister, whose name was Ludwika, found 12 pieces that were never published. One of them was Fantasy Impromptu. I'm going to play. I'd like you to just yell out the melody if you know what it is. In 1917. This became a popular hit from Chopin's melody. It goes like this. Just yell it out if you know it. What?
I'm always chasing rainbows.
You got it. You got it. That's that one. And then he ends the piece with the same melody, 2 octaves lower, and it ends like this. That's I'm Always Chasing Rainbows that was discovered from Fantasy Impromptu. Here's another one. It's called Till the End of Time. And it was a big hit for Perry Como, and lots of singers recorded this, Sinatra and Tony Bennett. And the lyrics, till the end of time, long as stars are in the blue, long as there's a spring, a bird to sing, I'll go on loving you. That's from a Polonaise that he wrote. You know, he was never able to get back to Poland. He left when he was 20. And he always, the Russians came in, and that's why he was never able to get back home. And so he always wanted to do something for the Polish people. So he wrote these Polonaises, which are Polish folk melodies. And he just was never able to get back home. And, you know, about 15 years ago, I played this piece at a retirement home in Westwood on Tiverton. It's right below UCLA and the Geffen Playhouse. And when I finished the little recital I gave, a man came up to me and said, I was in Warsaw in September of 1939 when the Nazis marched in. And he said on every radio station all over Poland, they played this Polonaise in a continuous loop all over the country to rally the Polish people to fight off the Russians. So he said to me, he said, why don't you tell that story the next time you play this piece? So I'm telling you all. All right. So this is, it's called Polonaise in A flat. See if I can do it. Okay, you know, when he was 30 years old, well, when he was 20, he moved out of Poland. He moved away from Warsaw, and he moved to Paris. And about a month after, the Russians came in, and he never got back to Poland. And that's where he met Georges Sand when he was 30. Her name was Aurora Dudevant. She had 2 children already, Maurice and Solange. And they had a 7-year affair. From 30 to, he died at the age of 39. He had tuberculosis. And 2 years before he died, he left her because she was just a caregiver. So he didn't want to burden her with that. So he left her, moved back to Paris. You know, she used to call him mon petit invalide, my little invalid. And but she also said he was a genius and he fascinated me. Anyway, they had a wild love affair for 7 years, or actually 6. And they went to, her son had some arthritis, and she decided to take the 2 children to Mallorca, which is an island off the coast of Spain by about 125 miles. But everybody knew who they were. Her name was Aurora Dudevant, but she became known as Georges Sand. And she was a very famous novelist. She was more famous than Victor Hugo at the time. She wrote 60 novels and memoirs. And she had a lot of money. And they had another house in a place called Nohant, which was about 2 hours south of Paris. And it was a farm. They had a barn, they had a great garden, and so he wrote a ton of things when they were in Mallorca, but they had trouble finding a place to stay. They couldn't stay in Palma. Everybody knew who they were, and they knew that they weren't married. And Mallorca is a very Catholic, Christian island, so they had to find a place to stay. And they finally did. She sent for his piano, the Pleyel piano. I have to tell you, there was an invention made right at the beginning of the time he was composing. It was called an escapement. Before this device was discovered, you couldn't do this on the piano because the key wouldn't bounce back fast enough. Now, behind every 88 of these keys, there's a complicated mechanism that it has a fulcrum, it has a spring, so that the note snaps back. And it opened up worlds of possibilities for Chopin, and his Franz Liszt was born a year after him in Hungary. But they both then were open to all kinds of variations of composing because of this little thing called an escapement. And I don't know where I'm going with that. So while he was there, he wrote, while they were in Mallorca, he wrote all kinds of preludes. And a prelude is an introductory piece to a longer, bigger piece. But he never wrote a bigger piece for these preludes. He just wrote one after the other. And I don't really have anything else to play for you today except one of his preludes, which I just love. And it goes like this. before I say something about Franz Liszt. Now, Chopin only lived to be 39, but Franz Liszt lived to be 71. And he concertized 1,000 concerts in 10 years. They became wealthy. He used to teach students. He had 300 students at the end of his life. They'd teach them for nothing because he was wealthy. And one day a student came up to him and said, how do I become a real artist? And he said, kind of in the Hungarian vernacular, get a life. He said, without life experience, you have nothing to say. So unless you've experienced love and sorrow and all kinds of emotions, you have nothing to say. So I love that of him. You know, when he died, when Chopin died, on his deathbed, Solange, Georges Sand's daughter, was there. George wasn't there. She wasn't there at the funeral either. And at the funeral, which was held at the Church of the Madeleine in Paris, 3,000 people came. And you had to have a ticket to get in. And the church only held a little over 2,000 people. So a lot of them were outside. And he wrote, 15 years before this, he wrote this, which we all know. Everybody makes fun of this, but this is... So, and it was, he also wanted, and this was played with a full orchestra, and he also wanted Mozart's Requiem, which demanded a full orchestra and a full chorus. So there was a lot of music at his funeral. But on the way to the Père Lachaise cemetery, which was 2 miles away, they walked in silence. Tell you one other thing, a little gruesome. On his deathbed, his attending physician, who he'd known for years, Chopin was afraid of being buried alive, which was not uncommon fear in the 19th century. So he said to the physician, when I die and you pronounce me dead, open my chest and take out my heart and put it in a glass jar with some preservative oils, and he gave it to, he did it, the doctor did it, and his older sister Ludwika took it back to the Church of the Holy Cross in Warsaw, and that's where it remains today. So he got back to Poland. Yeah, a little surreptitiously, but he got back there. I think that's all I have for you today. I don't have it. But he died of tuberculosis at 39 years old. But he left this huge legacy. He's the favorite son of Poland. Anyway, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, John. That was amazing.
Well, thank you. But, you know, I hate to leave you with a kind of a depressing moment there. If I could just, how about a little something else just to...
Yay, encore, encore.
This is Chopin. When I take my sugar to tea. part of today. I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.